Joining us now is Mayor Javan Danfour. He's an Iran lecturer at the Interdisciplinary Center in Herzliya. And Mayor, first, just to clarify for our viewers, you are from Iran. You were born there. You were raised there. You and your family left in 1987. Right. So you personally experienced the Islamic revolution and the aftermath. Talk a little about what you saw, the big changes in the country in that period, during that period.
Well, I remember the post-period more clearly. From what I remember from the time of the revolution was shootings and some, but afterwards there was more outbreak of violence between the different factions who supported Khomeini initially, but then Khomeini turned against them. Initially life became more insecure. And it was kind of a contradiction, because on the one hand I remember shootings, and one night I had an accident, and because there'd been shooting between the pro-Khomeini and the pro-Mujahideen factions who originally supported Khomeini, they took me to 2 hospitals. I had a car accident and they couldn't accept me because it was so full of injured people who were shot in the demonstrations. Wow. So they finally found a hospital, and I got home and I puked blood, and this is a terrible incident for my parents that they still remind me of it one day. Till today. But on the other hand, I also remember caricatures appearing of top government officials, and even as a 7-year-old, it was surprising for me. The first year of the revolution, there was relatively very loose laws on censorship. There was much more outspokenness. But I remember the atmosphere becoming more tense, and of course I'll never forget the day which was far more important than the revolution, which is the 20th of September 1980, when the Iraqis came to bombard Tehran airport, and henceforth the war started. And that soon overtook the revolution in terms of its enormity.
Right. Do you think that the families, yours among them, who left in the wake of the Islamic Revolution, imagine that 40 years later they might not return, that there might be an Iran as we see it today? Look,
many people thought that the revolution would end soon, and I can understand why. I mean, it's very easy to be sitting here 40 years and, you know,
right.
Hindsight
is 2020.
So easy. You could be such an incredible expert with hindsight. But, you know, there were a number of factors which made it, some people, you know, made some people doubt whether the revolution could survive. One of them was because soon Khomeini turned against the very factions who supported him, especially the Mujahideen Khalq, which is an opposition movement today. They were key in bringing Khomeini to power. And then he turned against the communists. But more importantly, Khomeini was a sick man. I was looking at even his interviews in Paris today, and you could see his hands was shaking already. I think he had a heart bypass by 1980. There was all the time there was an ambulance sitting in his driveway. And even the Soviets believed that he couldn't let, perhaps, you know, his health could get in the way. There's a very good book by a former KGB official who defected. He was in the Soviet embassy in Tehran. So there were many factors which made people to believe that the regime would not survive. And back then, in the context of time, they made sense, but the regime has managed to survive.
It has managed to survive. So let me ask you, 40 years from now, or 20 years from now, is there a possibility that the Islamic regime will not survive, or does it have a staying power?
I think it's possible that the regime will stay in power, but I'm not sure that Tehran will be livable within 20 years because of the incredible environmental challenges which it faces. The areas around the town are subsiding. Even within the city, they are subsiding. They're arriving. The Tehran Mehrabad airport, which is a very important domestic airport, is one of those danger areas. There are sinkholes appearing every month in Tehran, and the wetlands around Tehran are disappearing, which means that Tehran is now very much exposed in the coming years.
Wouldn't the fact of that kind of environmental disaster foment dissent in the country?
Maybe, maybe not. Maybe people will be too busy trying to run away or emigrate to other places rather than... But the most important thing is that the regime has a monopoly of power, and even more important than that, and I'm sorry to say, these are friends of Bashar al-Assad. They watch how... If you're willing to kill 100,000, 200,000 of your own people, you will stay in power. I wouldn't put it past this regime to do the same.
So let's talk about one other thing that's being said right now. I mean, even today, Rouhani is saying, again, lots of sort of bluster, these big statements, warnings both against the U.S. and saying that they will defeat U.S. sanctions. Is there any realism in what he's saying? Can Iran get around the constraints that are tightening on it now?
Look, I think the Iranian regime, times are tough. Times are very tough. the National Development Fund, which was usually getting 20% of oil income, next year the forecasting is going to have no money. And they've been taking so much money out of it.
Like you say, they don't mind spending that money for missiles rather than for basics.
But they do spend it on basics. I think they're waiting to see if Trump survives. The Iranian regime, by hook or by crook, could survive by 2020. If Trump is re-elected and they think, wow, we've got another 4 years with this guy, 4 years of sanctions, then I think we could see some movement.
In what direction?
Negotiations. But then again, I'm not sure Trump has got the people to be able to negotiate with Iran. With all due respect, looking at some of the stuff his officials say, you know, they are really, I think, off the charts in terms of understanding Iran. And I've been saying that with a lot of respect. Look, it's one thing to technically demand Iran to have zero enrichment, but Iran's nuclear program is not purely technical. It has a lot of political aspects. You know, you need, politically, I don't see the Khamenei agreeing to zero enrichment. But we have to wait and see. And until then, let's see if there's not going to be a war between Israel and Iran over Syria.